Hola a todos, welcome back to my channel. If you've been following along in this series, you know that I can't get my shit together, and this episode is not gonna be any different. But what is different, finally my landlord put up the molding on my kitchen door and I straightened my hair. And with that, let's recap the last episode of Building My Creative and Marketing Studio, where we talked about giving the brand a name and designing a logo. And I'm happy to announce I have a name! Now that I purchased my domain and have my Instagram account registered, I can share the name is BéaSol Studio. Why BéaSol? Bea is actually the first three letters of my middle name. Obviously, choosing a name was really hard and most of the generic ones were already taken. And I thought about doing something that was Taino because as a Dominican, that's kind of something that we do and we create creative businesses. I actually found so many other Dominican businesses that use a Taino name that are also creative studios. So that kind of left me with creating the name after me, which Bea actually means the bringer of happiness. And if you've been following along in the series, you now know by now that my brand is curious, free-spirited, edgy, playful, refined, and dynamic. And Sol obviously is sun in Spanish. I really wanted my brand to not only evoke that personality, but also communicate that this is a brand owned by an islander. It doesn't have to be specifically Dominican, but I wanted to evoke that this is an international brand. And this logo obviously sucks, but it is V1. I did modify the font a little bit. I rounded out the B on the bottom, and I know that it's not really acceptable to use just the font as your logo, but my logo is going to be a word mark for the most part. I had mentioned before that I was gonna maybe like do the sun in the logo, but that's too much on the nose. Maybe the sun can be an icon where it's like hand drawn. I'm still working on that. And in today's lesson of branding your business, we talked about finding the right font and minding your tone of voice. As you can see, I've already chosen a few fonts. Well, I was looking for something that would evoke a feeling of nature and kind of water and sun and show some kind of movement. I found this font that's called Tapestry. And when choosing this font, I also was imagining if I can take some elements from this font and perhaps make it a cursor, or it could be part of my iconography. And so I settled on this for now because it doesn't have to be perfect. And this brand was just born. So if I want to make a new logo in 6 months, I will. And I probably will. Then as I was looking for a body font, I actually found this font called Assistant. But then when I showed my best friend this presentation, she was messing around with the logos and put those two together. And I really liked how they looked. So this font Assistant went from being my body font to now being the accompanying font in my word mark. For the rest of the fonts, I still haven't chosen one for my H1, but I do know that I want it to be a heavy serif font that kind of looks like the font used in the word mark, but not really. And then my H2 font, well, I don't know the rules. I'm gonna Google this. Can I use a word mark font in my brand? Okay, so yes, you can use a font that is also used in a word mark for your H2 headings, but you must comply with the font licensing. So yes, back to what I was saying. I liked this font Assistant so much that I made it my H2, which I see my website. My website is a whole nother story that's probably going to be its own series because I have so many ideas and so many influences. But what I picture for my website is having like heavy H1 font and then H2 fonts that complement it, exactly like my logo. And it's so hard to pick a font because, for example, for the body copy, I'm playing around with Barito, Quicksand, a new font Sensation. And what I'm looking for here is how the A curves. Do I want the A to be written traditionally or modern? I might go with modern because then I also have an additional font, which I'm calling it quotes, but it would be kind of like for handwritten graphics or testimonials or little embellishment fonts here and there. Initially, I wanted to turn my handwriting into a font, but I'm not sure about that because it's so imperfect and then I have to draw all the symbols and everything. So I just went with this font, which ironically is called Island Moment because I'm island gal. Island. So that's what I have in terms of fonts. I have my Tapestry, I have assistant, and you know what? I don't even know if I'm supposed to tell you all of this, but whatever. Go ahead and use the font if you like it. I don't care. And I actually got ahead of myself and started playing around with colors, because if I'm creating a logo, I need to picture how it would look in its variety. So I picked colors based on this Larimar stone, which, if you don't know, Larimar is a precious stone that is found only in Dominican Republic, nowhere else. And so obviously, if my theme is island vibes, whatever, edgy vibes, modern island vibes, then I want to represent my country somehow, and I'm doing it through the colors of the most unique precious stone in the world. And that's what my logo looks like, with the color variety. And then the other exercise that we did today was Mind Your Tone, which basically was guiding us through how to identify how to talk to people. For example, you wouldn't talk the same way to your sister that you would your boss. And so that's where those adjectives that I came up with in the past come up. So it's tying together now, you see? And if you remember, some of those adjectives, like I said earlier, were curious, free-spirited, edgy, playful, refined, approachable. So based on those adjectives for each archetype, obviously that would be my tone of voice depending on what I want to say, which is actually very hard to figure out and decide. I wish we could just use one tone of voice, not just in terms of branding, but also when we speak to people, I wish it would just be one tone. That would make it so much easier. So now that I have my brand purpose, my brand values, my tribe, I have the concepts of a logo, a couple of fonts and colors, what's left? What would be next is developing my styling, and probably by the next video, this presentation will be a little bit more decked out with these colors. Ooh, I'm so excited to show you. If you've been enjoying this series, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm dropping a new video every Friday, probably until I build my website. We'll see about that. And that's it for today's episode of building my creative and marketing studio from the ground up. And if you've been watching so far, let me know what you think. Do you think that the fonts I chose and the color scheme that I'm going with communicate those adjectives that I talked about? Is it giving innovative, bold, expressive? I'm obviously building this in a vacuum, and any feedback is appreciated. So thanks in advance. Bye.